Okay, well here we are with our code. We're going to try and take a look at this code. I've just transferred over the pseudocode that I wrote with paper and pen. I've transferred that over into my terminal, so I'm going to be working here on the left side on the terminal, and then I'll be working over on the right side here to run the program and debug it from time to time. So you can see I've got my statement at the beginning here. I'm going to be using Python 3, and I've got a little bit of a comment there explaining what this program is and who wrote it. I've got my def main down at the bottom of the program. I've got this statement down here, these lines down here, which say we're going to be running this main program. Up here at the top, then, you can see that I've written a comment here from the pseudocode, a comment here from the pseudocode, and then enclosed in triple quotes, a very long comment, which is all my pseudocode there. And the reason I've put that in triple quotes there, so it's commented, is this isn't actually Python code. If I try to run this, it's not going to work. So I'm going to slowly work my way through this, testing as I go to make sure that my program works as I think it will. So let me start out with some of the easy stuff here. I said I was going to ask the user if they want to play, so let me start out with that, and maybe I'll put that in a variable called they want to play, and I'm going to call that, I'll get a So in my pseudocode, I said I was going to ask the user if they wanted to play. So let's get a response for that there. Maybe I'll just call it response, and I'll ask them, do you want to play craps? And we're going to have them input yes or no. And we're not going to do any error trapping in here. That's something you certainly should build into your program at one point. But for the ease of our algorithm today, we're just going to work on this yes or no thing. And we'll find out if we're actually going to run through. We'll get their response there and find out if we're actually going to do something with them. Well, I guess we need to ask right away then. We need to say, if they entered yes, if response is equal to yes, then we're going to ask them if they want instructions. We wouldn't want to ask them if they wanted instructions if they didn't want to play. So if they want to go, then we'll say, print here are the instructions. Based on their response, we'll decide whether or not we want to give them the instructions. We shouldn't give them the instructions if they don't want to play. So if response is equal to yes, and right now I'm just going to put this statement in here that says instructions. I'm not actually going to put all the instructions in. That's something you can do later on when you want to fill those in. So good, I've taken care of that, and I've taken care of this, and I could leave those comments in, but this is pretty straightforward code, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. And now let's figure out what's going on. I think this is going to work, actually. Well, let's try this out. Let's try it out and see what happens. I'm going to save this program, go over here and run it, and we'll see what happens. Python craps.py, do you want to play craps? If I say no, then nothing's going to happen. It's just going to end the program. But if I say yes, I want to play craps, it's going to deliver the instructions. Now, actually, I don't want to deliver the instructions straight away, or maybe I do. Maybe I do. Maybe I want to put a nested if in there. If we're going to play, then my next question is response to, let's call it something better than that. Instructions is equal to input, do you need instructions? And again, I'll put that little yes, no in there. Give myself a little more room here. And how about if we do this? If instructions is equal to yes, then we'll print the instructions. Otherwise, we're not going to print the instructions. So we'll only print the instructions if they want. Let's try that and see how that works now. Notice how I'm checking my code as I go, every little step along the way. Do I want to play craps? Yes. Do you need instructions? No. So this shouldn't give me the instructions. But if I now test it, do you want to play craps? Yes. Do you need instructions? Yes. it's going to print out the instructions for me. So things are working the way I want them to this point. Very nice. What do we need to do next? Now we need to get into this loop here. While the user wants to play. How do I know if the user wants to play? I'm going to know that the user wants to play. And notice where I am. I'm over here, right in this section here. I'm over on the side here. I've indented 4 spaces because I know their response was yes. So I'm already in here. I could leave this in here. I actually think in this case I'm going to bring it off to the side, move out over here. And I'm going to say, while the user wants to play. How do I know if they want to play? While response is equal to yes. And you might be saying, I know the response is equal to yes, and that's true. We do know that the response is yes this time, but later on we're going to ask them again, do they want to play again? In which case, we'll want to check again. While the response is yes, while that's true, what are we going to do? The next thing we said we were going to do was get this first roll here. So I'm looking at my notes down here, my pseudocode, and I'm thinking I'm going to get that first roll. To get that first roll then, I need to say first roll is equal to that sum of 2 dice rolls. The way you get dice rolls is something like this. Random.randRange 6 plus 1. That'll give you a random number between 0 and 5 and add 1 to it to get a number from 1 to 6. But since there are going to be 2 dice rolls, I'm going to actually have to do that twice. So that's going to get me a roll. And let's just double check and make sure that that's working the way I want it to. I'll print out first roll and see what happens. Do you think it's going to work? Let's see what happens. Do you want to play craps? Yes. No. And it blew up. It looks like the name random is not defined, and that's because this random package here hasn't been imported. So up at the top, I'm going to need to import random. And now let's try and see what happens. Got a bunch of dice rolls coming through. If I were to stop and look at that, it looks like these are all legitimate dice rolls. I've got some 11s, I've got some 10s. The lowest I should see is a 2, and the highest I should see is a 12. And I don't see any 12s in there. Do you see any 12s? Oh, there's a 12. All right, looks like it's working the way I need it to. What's next? If first roll is 7 or 11, they win. All right, so we need to print out, or we need to figure out whether or not they're going to win by saying something like, if first roll is equal to, remember it's a doubles equal because we're comparing, if first roll equals 7 or first roll equals 11, then we know they won. If, how can we lose? How can we lose in this? If first roll is equal to 2, or first roll is equal to 3, or first roll is equal to 12, then we know that they lost. And we're going to have to go down here and say print you lost. Else, and then here's something that we'll have to worry about later on. I'm just going to put a note here. Else, we're going to try to roll the point. Putting a little debugging message in there. I haven't written that part of the code yet, but I'm going to try that part of the code and then we'll see what happens. You ready? Let's write that and see what happens. Do you want to play craps? Yes. Do you need instructions? No. Now this is really interesting because it's running through and apparently it might be working. It's kind of hard to say. One of the things that's nice about games is you want them to be a little bit interactive. So how about if I do this? How about if every time I roll the die, I ask the user to press the enter key. That'll make it more interactive. So I'm going to just use a dummy variable called pause here. Pause equals input, press enter to roll the dice. So I'll just put that there, and that'll slow up the program for just a moment so that they can do that. They can figure out what's happening, get involved in that program. Let's try it again. Press enter to roll the dice. How nice, good. You lost. Now that's unfortunate. We're going to try to roll the point, press enter. We're going to try. I'm not really getting the feedback I need. I guess I'd like to print out what the result of the die roll is every time. So where would I do that in my program here? Maybe right after I roll? I certainly did that before. That's probably where I should put it there. Print, you rolled, and then we'll put that first roll in there. Enter to roll the dice. You rolled a 9. We're going to try to roll the point. You rolled a 5. So it looks like it's doing exactly what it needs to do. At this point, I've got some pretty good code here. As I look over this, I've got the first roll more or less down. This whole business with trying to roll the point is what I really need to work on. So let me get rid of some of my pseudocode here. And I'm getting now down to this else part. Else, we're going to try to roll the point. So what did we say we were going to do? We said we were going to keep that first roll. We then said we were going to make a new roll. Now remember, the new roll is going to be just like this first roll. So I'm actually just going to grab that guy and paste him down here. It's just like the first roll, except it's now the new roll. We're going to get a new roll with those two numbers, and I suppose we should tell them what they got. Print, you rolled a new roll. Now what are we going to do with that now? While new roll is not the point. So how do I code that? While new roll is not equal to point, and while new roll is not equal to 7, because if it's equal to the point, then we're going to win, and if it's equal to 7, we're going to lose. So we're going to have to check those. As long as those things aren't happening, though, well, if those two things are true, then they're going to have to roll again. So I'm going to say, little note there, print, try again to roll your point. And then how do we do that? We're going to have them do yet another new roll. So we'll grab that there. Looks like my indenting's off a little bit here. And I guess we want to tell them what they did, right? What they got. Every time we have to tell them what they got. So down here, print you rolled a new roll. And we'll keep on doing that until either new roll is equal to point or new roll is equal to 7. At that point, then, we'll be able to figure out what kind of message we should give them. We'll fall out of this while loop, and at that point, then we can say, if their point, or if I should say their new roll, is equal to the point, then we're going to print, again, you won. Else, if it wasn't the point, then it must have been 7, so they lost. Print, you lost. Let's try and run that and see what happens. We've got a little bit of work to check here. It's been a while since we've done any testing, so let's run through and see what this looks like. I'm going to give myself a little room here. Do you want to play? Yes. Instructions? No. Press enter to roll the dice. Rolled an 8. We're going to try to roll the point. That means I'm going to try and get an 8, and I'm going to keep going until I get a 7. I rolled a 7, and I lost. That's exactly right. Now it looks like it's assuming I want to play again. Press enter to roll the dice. It looks like I'm assuming I want to keep playing craps forever and ever, so but we'll pretend. You rolled an 11. You won. That's what you get on the first roll. So I'm testing here and it's working. Now it's assuming I want to play again. Wow, you rolled a 4. We're going to try to roll the point. You rolled a 6, a 2, a 12, a 10. I finally got a 4 and I won. That's good. It's not really doing what I was hoping it was going to do. I was hoping it was going to ask me to press enter each time to roll the dice. So that part's not included there. I'm going to go over and grab that. For all these new rolls, every time we do a new roll, I want to say press enter to roll again. That's this pause line right here. So I'm going to grab that pause line and move it in here. Try again to roll your point. Maybe I'll actually do it this way. Pause equals input. Press enter to try to roll the point. I think that'll work out really nicely. And the other thing that was bugging me, go a little bit quicker here. Another thing that was bugging me, it was assuming I wanted to play again each time, and I don't want to do that. It's just assuming that my response was yes here on this big while loop, while the response is yes. Remember, that response is what I said when I said, do you want to play craps? Ideally, I'd like to get a chance to change that response. So I'm going to grab that line and go down here, and in the bottom of the while loop, in the bottom of the part that repeats, I'm going to include this. I'm indenting it so it's included in the body of that while loop. Response equals input. Do you want to play again? Let's see how that works now. Move over here, try testing this. Do you want to play craps? Yes. No instructions. Press enter to roll the dice. I rolled a 6 and I made my point. Do you want to play again? Now it's asking me. If I say no, it's going to fall out of the program. But if I run this, 4, 6, 11, I got to keep going until I get a 4 or a 7. I rolled a 7 and lost. Do you want to play again? Now response is still yes. So then I rolled a 7 and 1 on that first roll. So this looks like it's working just about the way it should. The last thing I'm going to put in there that I said I'd do in my pseudocode, if I say no and don't want to play again, I want to leave a nice goodbye message for the user. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. At the very bottom here, say goodbye. Remember, this response is part of the while loop. If I come out of the while loop, I'll be indented here, and I'll say print. Okay, see you next time. And so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this pseudocode. I think my program is working more or less the way I want it to. I should do some testing on it to be sure. So one last thing I'm going to do. Remember that function. We said, well, we're rolling the dice a fair amount. Maybe we should make that a separate function. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to make that a separate function. I'm going to call it dice roll. Def dice roll. And in there I'm going to do the things that I end up always doing in all these. It seems like in this program, every time I was pausing to have them hit enter to roll the dice. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. It seemed like every time then I was rolling these guys here, these 2 dice, so I'm going to grab all that stuff and put that in here. I'm actually going to roll those and put that maybe in a variable called dice roll or something. Let's put it down here. I better not use dice roll because I already used that. Roll is equal to random.randrange. That gets those, puts those together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return that value to the main program. And what does that mean? That means every time I call the function dice roll, it's going to send this value back to the main program. So what is first roll going to be? If I put dice roll here, this will call the dice roll function, get a value, return roll, and store that value in first roll. So this is my new way of doing this. Notice I'm also giving feedback every time. I'm always saying print you rolled a first roll, or down here you rolled a new roll. It seems like that's also code that's being duplicated there. So how about if I take that out as well and include that as part of my function up here? print you rolled, and then we'll put in roll. So that's going to save me quite a bit of code here. Point equals first roll is going to take care of all of that. When I do new roll, what am I going to do for that? I'm not going to do all this mess anymore. I'm just going to say call the function dice roll, and that'll give all that information and store the new roll in new roll. I don't need this line, this print statement. And same thing down here, this new roll mess, I can get rid of this. I'm going to replace all of that with dice roll, cleaning up my code a little bit, and now I don't need that anymore. So, pretty good little program here. Let's take a look and run it one more time and double check to see if it works. I'll run craps.py. Do you want to play craps? Rolled an 8. You rolled a 7, you lost. Interestingly, it didn't, this time here, it didn't tell me I rolled a 5, press enter to roll the point. How come it didn't give me what the point was each time? Press enter to roll the dice. There's something weird going on there. I'm going to have to go through and debug that. Oh, it's this extra print statement here. It's this extra pause in here. I need to get rid of that pause. Let's try it now. We'll keep going until we get a 7. Oh, we lost. Ooh, I got that. Good. So it looks like it's working. Hope this helps.